Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Marketing Mini Bites podcast. Really, this podcast is aimed at people who want to get that short, snappy, insightful marketing information that they need to effectively think outside the box and do a better job. I'm speaking to some really good, insightful, really innovative people, thought leaders and marketers alike. I'm really excited to share that all with you over the next few episodes. Today, I've been speaking to Neil Jones, who works at Sky Bet Gaming. It's really great to get an understanding of really what makes him tick and what the future holds for him. So enjoy. Hello, welcome back to Marketing Mini Bites. Today, I've been joined by Neil Jones, who's the Digital Marketing Manager at Sky Bet Gaming. How are you doing, Neil?
Hello, very good. How are you?
Yeah, all good. Nice sunny afternoon. Well, not so sunny actually in Manchester. So yeah, couldn't ask for much more. Are you based in Leeds now these days?
Still Stockport, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm actually enjoying the Manchester sunny / cloudy day today.
Nice. It's not too bad, is it? So as I mentioned, yeah, you work for Sky Bet Gaming. Can you tell us a bit about that and how you got into it? Kind of, I guess the question that every marketing listener wants to know is kind of how did you get into marketing in the first place?
Yeah, this is always a really mad question, isn't it? A really difficult one. I'm trying not to fill in all the cliches of, I've always wanted to be a marketer. It's just something I've always wanted to do with my life. Weirdly, it is actually something that I always really wanted to do, very strangely. I've spoken about this a few times, but when I was younger, I used to, honestly, I can feel the clichéness in this. It's just ridiculous. I used to look through, there used to be a job website called monsterjobs.co.uk. I don't know whether you remember.
Yeah, I remember them.
Website. It's a programmatic trader's dream now. It's just full of display ads everywhere. But I used to look on there when I was mid-teens, looking at marketing jobs, salaries, what you could do for a living, I guess, in the marketing world. And some of them are a bit more kind of colourful than I suppose others were, and I always kind of read them with, I don't know, a bit of dreams. A big dream I'd kind of go on and work in that field, I suppose. So I ended up doing marketing at uni. I left uni, went to work for Enterprise Rent-A-Car on the graduate scheme, basically cleaning cars for 2 years. And then ended up cleaning cars for 2 years, selling rental car insurance for 2 years, and then basically just called it a day. I was like, right, I need to actually go and do something where I can actually use my degree. And then ended up working for free for a couple of months for an agency in the Northern Quarter. Used that experience to get my first paid agency job in paid search. Realised that I was not too brilliant at paid search, and then took more of a client services kind of route, being a bit more of a generalist. But yeah, went from there, just ended up at Sky Bet from the 1st of March last year, and essentially I just lead the digital marketing for Sky Gaming. So Sky Vegas, Sky Bingo, Sky Poker and Sky Casino, I look after the digital marketing team. So there's 7 of us all together. There's
a lot to cover, I think, for you there as well. I think it's really surprising actually how many people kind of start off their marketing journey in some way linked to PPC. Always seems to be there's the demand there, or they naturally fall into it. Especially for me now, I'm very similar to you in a kind of slightly more broader role in acquisition, but PPC is almost that channel, I guess, where you can almost hit the ground running, because it's paid and because the results are instant. You kind of learn a lot straight off the bat, don't you?
Yeah, I think the grounding, even though I wasn't in it for that long, I think the grounding that it gave me in terms of how does one metric impact another metric, how do you calculate those metrics, the importance of performance media on any kind of marketing plan. Yeah, being able to talk about it confidently when you're talking to clients, it gives you a fantastic ground in paid search, I think, to move forward from.
Yeah,
I definitely think that when you interact with some of the other disciplines, especially from a client services standpoint, sometimes you can feel that almost like that knowledge gap sometimes of not being as confident when talking about performance metrics. And I think paid search is definitely, it's great. It's a really, really great grounding to have. And yeah, I know a few heads of media who kind of come from that paid search background. It's definitely a good pedigree to come from.
Yeah, definitely. It almost sets the scene for any kind of future where you kind of, it's almost very numbers heavy. So I know a bit about what you do now is going into a bit more of the TV side of things. Was that new to you coming to Sky Bet, or is that something you're really excited about doing now?
It's just more kind of breadth, I guess. So we're not in my team. So in our team, we have programmatic, directly bought partnerships, a lot of kind of Lab Bible, Joe Media, Reach PLC, directly bought programmatic activity, programmatic, paid social, paid search, and then SEO as well. So I suppose being part of a wider media function, so got our team and then another team, and the other team kind of has all the above the line media. We work incredibly closely with the other team, I suppose, on all the kind of campaigns and everything. So you are talking pretty regularly around how is digital going to be able to fit into that kind of master plan and investment of an overarching campaign, and what value does digital have to bring to the table in terms of being able to get mass reach and scale, or mid-funnel kind of consideration shift, or drive people to site, or get conversions, or talk to existing customers. And the great thing is it has a part to play at every part of the funnel, and it's really fascinating trying to kind of tweak and optimize different parts of activity to make it fit for purpose for whatever we need it to do. And that's the most exciting thing about it, I think.
Yeah, awesome. I think one thing I've realized as well is a lot of people, a lot of businesses always want that bottom funnel people. They don't want people that are just about to convert, pump all your money in there and just go after those guys, you know, particularly through likes of PPC. But especially for you, I know one thing you're really interested in is that kind of omni-channel approach, and almost being able to really understand how every single part of the journey contributes to that sale or that kind of purchase. Is that something you guys are looking really into in all the kind of omni-channel and attribution approach?
Yeah, I think from I think from like an omni-channel standpoint, we're definitely, the great thing is that I think a lot of people look at Skybet and they kind of think, oh, they're just going to be so into performance media, they're not going to invest a penny into brand or any kind of, you know, awareness and consideration driving activity, and it's all going to be £1 in, £1 out. And I think that the refreshing thing of when I was interviewing for SBG, and when I've massively bought into the vision that we've kind of all built together. The cool thing about it isn't just kind of like the focal point of acquisition and nothing else, and everything else has to surrender budget because everything has to go into acquisition, and if it's not costing in, it can't stay on plan. You know, I think the great thing about SBG is they'll take a punt, and as long as the business case makes sense and we've built a robust enough kind of like plan, we can put something on plan and we can test it. And as long as there's an ability to put some kind of research study together which allows us to say whether it worked or whether it didn't work, then yeah, it gives us that evidence to go back to finance or go back to the senior leadership team and say, actually, we want to do it again, but we need more money to do it next time to do it better, or maybe we want to dial it back and try something else. So I think it's the omnichannel kind of like piece is definitely strong with SBG, and that's definitely one of the big reasons as to why I kind of jumped on board, really.
Great.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I know that a lot of companies as well are almost trying things to be just first to market as well, and trying something that's new, whether that's a new Google beta, or I think there's something out in the future coming where you can buy stuff through social media platforms. All these things are big, and you know, if you're there at first, then it could be even bigger. I remember back in the day doing a lot of Bing work on a lot of search terms that no one else was bidding on because I was first to market and got the benefit of it. So there's definitely that kind of first mover's advantage as well. What's the kind of setup like for you guys then when it comes to kind of marketing channels? Do you kind of have any one particular channel that you love the most? Is there anything that you're really trying to experiment with at the moment, or anything that you're trying to maybe stay away from?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the last point there actually is worth mentioning. I think because we're a gambling company, we can only play in spaces that are safe. Right. So brand safe, and allow us to strictly only target people who are over the age of 25. And we do a lot of like audience suppression. So we do a hell of a lot in the programmatic space where we avoid anyone who might be sharing a device with a child. When there's like a child in home filters that we'll use, we'll work a lot with integral ad science from like a pre-bid and a post-bid protection standpoint for programmatic. We'll also look at like audience suppression, where we kind of make sure that anybody who's kind of like raised their hand and said, hey, I want to like cool off for a little while, I don't want to receive any advertising, we'll add them to a suppression list and make sure that they don't get served any digital communication. So that, from that standpoint, it's absolutely crucial. Like that means a hell of a lot to us. And again, one of the big reasons I came on board at SPG is because the people at SPG matter, but the customers also matter incredibly importantly as well, and how we can kind of protect those people and make sure that they can kind of game and gamble safely. So that's definitely one point to kind of just mention there. And I've just rambled on so much about SPG, I've just forgotten completely what the question was.
It was just about channels. So, like, maybe moving away from the less negative, more positive side of things, is there any channels that you maybe love or maybe would drive more of?
Yeah, I just get engrossed in safe gambling. I think in year one, one of the most, so 2020 for me, the most important thing was to establish a baseline. So not really coming in and knowing which channels are smashing it and which ones aren't, doing so well, and I think it was difficult to kind of ascertain that. And the year one view, where we kind of, a lot of us were new. It was a brand new digital media team that came in January 2020. Like 5 new people, one that had kind of survived from the previous team. A lot of people had kind of left, and they kind of just completely refreshed and reinvested in digital media. And I'd kind of come in to kind of lead that, really. And we kind of all looked around and saw we didn't really have a reporting function. We didn't have a forecasting function. We didn't really have a lot that, let's say if we spent 250k on a direct buy with a particular partner, we wouldn't have a way of knowing what we'd really got for that investment outside of like impression delivery, which is super weak, and it's just not enough. So like we were doing a lot of kind of searching around for which partners are the ones that are helping us advance our proposition and are helping us keep the customers safe and are helping us kind of learn, develop, and which ones are proactively putting opportunities in front of us. And then we were looking at the ones that didn't, cut the ones that didn't, keep working and scale with the ones that do, and then search for even more that are going to be able to help us realise our vision. And whether it depends really, because when we defined our vision for last year, it was very much around, let's cut the shiny new object syndrome out and let's focus. And this year we've been able to kind of start looking a little bit more now we've got that foundation in place, look a bit more inspirationally at things and look at the tech stack and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it depends really on what the kind of focus is, but we do have kind of a baseline now that we've established in terms of like, this is how much we should be spending on our kind of core activity across search and social and programmatic. So yeah,
I think the whole proactivity piece that you picked up on as well is super important. It's almost a scale, if a channel's continuing to perform well, why would we turn the taps off? And a good analogy that I've always thought of is, it's like an ice cream guy who's selling ice creams at a sunny lunchtime. You're not just going to pack up once you've hit your forecast. If you sold your quota by 1 p.m, if you've got the stock, you're going to sell it through. And that's particularly likely even for those that maybe your products, where for all point intensive purposes, the stock is probably unlimited, right? You can have an unlimited or close to it. People are betting. So that's really interesting. I guess on the safety side of things as well. So the whole thing that's up and coming now is all about kind of cookies and how we deal with that. I know Google have pushed kind of the dates back there, and I think a lot of people maybe aren't ready for it. But kind of within your world, how are you tackling the cookies side of things?
I think because we invest, I think anybody should be trying to solve this equation anyway. Just because I think even if you don't invest heavily in programmatic media, I think you can't really afford to kind of just cut that channel off and be like, oh, it's not going to be a channel we ever utilize, so therefore we don't really have to solve this problem. I think everybody in the industry and all the different partners that we work with have a vested interest in trying to figure out what that looks like. We kind of set up like an internal working group in January this year, which some people would consider like a bit late. Some people would probably say it was probably a bit too early. We set up a working group, got all the media team and the MadTech teams together, even got people from like legal and risk and everybody in there just so they can get the exposure to it. Started kind of doing a bit of an education piece with the leadership team in terms of what is a cookie. Some of them didn't really know what a cookie was, why it's valuable, what's happening. And that going through that process over the first like 4 or 5 months of the year was really cool. Just going around the business, banging the drum for this is why it's important, this is what our initial approach is. But really, we just started to cast the net out really far and wide, like having direct conversations with people like LiveRamp, our DMP, the tech stack, as I mentioned, that we were working with, having conversations with Google, like when is this going to happen, staying close to the flock conversations and the tail dove conversations, whilst trying to balance the other identity problems like iOS 14.5 and then iOS 15 coming in September. So there's quite a lot there, and I think one of the things that we kind of really realized was a lot of us are kind of ex-agency that have come in-house, and some are clients, like pure client-siders. So we've definitely got like the best of both worlds in the team. But one of the things that we kind of realized last year was, even though you've come in from outside as ex-agency talent, and even though we've got client-siders together, we still all struggle to kind of, we might identify 80% of what the solution needs to be, but when it comes to the additional 20%, that could potentially be quite commercially risky. So we need to kind of outsource that, and we utilize agency support in order to be able to identify that and help us to, from a consultancy standpoint, almost like future-proof ourselves against those like future headwinds. So through doing that and mixing our own knowledge together, things like LiveRamp, looking at like data clean rooms, like trying to explore like the importance of like contextual, like smart contextual. How important is geo targeting? Is that going to become even more important than it has been? Yeah, just like going pretty like far and wide with it. But I think there's stuff like data clean rooms and stuff like that, like really future responsible data privacy led anonymity kind of view of the world is really exciting, because I think that's definitely like, we shouldn't be looking at the cookie problem and going, how do we just find another cookie like to use, another kind of identifier that's just as bad. We should probably be looking a bit more progressively at the situation and looking at to try and advance things and not just find a way around it, I guess.
Yeah, I think we've definitely got to sort of try and deal best with the data that we have, even through that, predictive analytics and a lot of AI to try and guess what that is. So the future is definitely bright, and I think the people that are going to try and find those solutions first, like you guys are trying to do, are definitely going to win from that. I thought a really interesting point that you picked on there was the whole kind of agencies use and agency side. Definitely from the agencies that I've spoken to recently, it's almost, I feel like they've evolved in some way. I think a historical agency format was kind of just, you work with us, here's our kind of monthly retainer, let's go from there. Whereas more and more at the moment, what I've heard is agencies are maybe doing it on a more project level for maybe the cookie problems we've discussed, or maybe just even for a bit of training to help train like the people that have maybe never been or touched certain channels before. How are you guys using agency then? Is that very much on a project base, or is it kind of very much longer term?
Yeah, I think so. We don't use any agencies to do any buy-in at all. So we don't. So PhD Manchester are our kind of above the line TV and what have you buy-in agency, and we don't use them for any kind of like buy-in of digital media. So we buy everything in-house. Everything's in-house managed on the vet side and on our side. We have an incredibly talented group of people who are an absolute pleasure and are absolutely amazing to work with. They're all hungry and all obsessed by that kind of digital media fire of trying to learn more and talk to partners all the time and trying to leverage the different partners that we have to learn more and stuff. And it's really brilliant. But like I say, I think we had that gap, and we have that gap of kind of like, what you don't know almost, like we don't know everything. We live within an SPG view of the world. We're extremely jaded, and there are people out there, whether they're at PhD or they're at a consultancy or they are one of our kind of existing partners that we work with. I think the big thing that we have to really look out for is the commerciality kind of angle, and is an agency that we're working with just trying to monetize certain kind of insights that they're putting in front of us, and just telling us something because they want to angle us down a certain route to buy a product, because it's just kind of dangerous, because you just want an honest view of the world. You want the independent, impartial view of the world. Like if you kind of say that's like paid search as an example. Let's say, for example, our paid search account hadn't been audited for maybe 4 or 5 years, which is well overdue in my eyes. Like, you'd need someone to come in, take a look at it, audit it. People are usually afraid of the word audit, but they really shouldn't be. I guess they should take a look at it, but they shouldn't kind of be doing that. Yeah, this is all horrendous and we need to handle it all for you. It should be, this is what works, this is what doesn't really work. This is what you could do with some support on over here. We could do this for 6 months for you, and we could work together to make that happen. This is what the fee is going to be. Oh, and we can also educate the people in your team so that they're even stronger in 6 months' time. And that's absolutely perfect. Like, to hear that is wonderful, but many agencies don't get that right, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think similar to that as well, it's the same approach with automation. It's one of those things where, maybe a lot of ad tech buying platforms want you to automate more and do a lot more automated. People may be not so sure about doing it because they're not sure of the consequences. But I think more than anything else, people need to almost be educated to know what those changes are going to do, maybe what the tech's going to take control of or take control away from. So similarly with, agencies like you're talking about, I think it's really important that, particularly for likes of your team, which I'm sure you're great at, is just building up that knowledge and education. So almost knowing that if you're being taken down a certain path, the pros and cons before that's even happened, right? And in terms of kind of structuring and managing big teams, how do you do that? How do you educate and manage and particularly motivate a team as well?
Yeah, I think so. The talent thing's really important, I think. So I think the talent stuff, from like, we've been doing a fair bit of recruitment recently, but I think from a talent standpoint, it's really, really big, because you need people. When you think about the digital team and all the stakeholders that a media team in general or a digital team have, you've got the creative team, the data team, a data science team, potentially an external agency, campaign function, the marketing team who come up with the propositions, all that kind of stuff. You've got so many different people that you need your team to like I always kind of liken it to, and it's kind of something I speak to the guys about now, and quite a lot really, is that we all, our own team almost has our own kind of like brand. Like the gaming digital media team is a brand, and we need to make sure that what we output is at a certain level. How we treat stakeholders and work with those stakeholders is more of a partnership and less transactional. So we from a recruitment standpoint, from an in-house team standpoint, we try and recruit people and work with people to make sure that from a stakeholder and relationship building standpoint, they're very good. They have that energy to kind of drive things forward. They don't just let things sit. They pick it up, drive forward. They've got a bit of energy and ownership about their channel. But I think the biggest thing is defining a collective vision and working towards it all together, and not just being me just kind of going, hey, this is absolutely what we're going to need to do, guys. Like, let's go and do this. And them all kind of feeling like they're being dictated to. I think like last year there was probably a bit of that from me, and I think there's times when it's good and there's times when it's bad, but I think now we've kind of built that foundation this year. It's really cool to have kind of been like, right, what do we want to do in 2021 and what do we want to do in 2022, and everyone can kind of feed into that. And because everyone's feeding into it, we, you know, collectively have a part to play in that, and people can see from like a value and like a career, you know, standpoint and self-fulfillment perspective. Like they feel bought into it, and they feel part of that overall kind of journey we're all on, and that feels really nice. Like it having that accountability across the team is really cool, and having it not all fall on me is quite nice.
Yeah, I bet you've not got as much pressure in that regards, at least sometimes anyway. I definitely agree with what you're saying. I think definitely as part of a team, it's almost about understanding which person's playing which role. Some people are going to be, you know, maybe really extroverted. They're going to make sure they've got the team bond there. Maybe some people are the doers. They're going to sit in the background and kind of do the work, as it were. I think what's really interesting I found, particularly over the last year of COVID or so, is that it's really allowed the sort of the more introverted people to stand out a little bit more and get more involved, because maybe they're behind a camera, they have more confidence speaking, and so that really team dynamics, I think, has really changed for some people, maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. I don't know about you guys, you know, particularly for the likes of the companies I've been working for, it's very much like the likes of Teams and your Skypes just rocketed over the last year, but we're still using them now because, you know, if I think about it, if it wasn't for what's happened, not that in any way it's a good thing, but I'm talking 100 times more a day to people in Germany that I did before the pandemic. And so to have this realization that tech it's something that I've never even thought about, but Microsoft Teams has been so pivotal in what we do and what I've done personally. And, you know, I can just click one click, someone's automatically in that call with me. It's absolutely brilliant. You know, they could be anywhere in the world. So really, really good. Is that something that you guys are using as well, that similar sort of hybrid in-person or online approach?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, like SPG are a wonderful company when it comes to, they're very like people first. They're extremely flexible when it comes to, you know, they're not pressuring anybody to kind of get back into the office. And even when we are in the office, we're trying to make it as comfortable as possible for people who are still at home, who maybe aren't as comfortable to get back in yet, or maybe have other commitments going on right now. Like, you know, they've organised like childcare in a certain way, and it's going to be like that for the next 6 months. Company's fine with that. I'm fine with that from a management perspective. And I think, as I mentioned, like trying to make people, the big challenge for me is trying to make people feel part of the team, even though they're from home or maybe not they're at home or maybe not in the meeting room. And that's a really big challenge, because I think when you're on a big camera and the camera's at the front of the meeting room and it's looking at the meeting room, sometimes it can feel a little bit like, oh, I don't really want to say anything because I'm kind of disrupting this meeting, and I'm just going to sit back. And we've tried a couple of things to try and solve that, like everybody dialing in from their desk so you can see their faces. That's been quite cool. But yeah, like there's no pressure there whatsoever, and the hybrid working I think will be something that we continue going forward, because at the moment it's working really well. Awesome,
good to hear. I guess what's been your biggest learning as well from last year with all the stuff that's been kicking off? Is there anything that you thought, right, that's definitely something we'll avoid doing, or that's something we want to be more of? I know Teams is a great example of that, but is there anything else that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think so another thing that the company does quite well is we really invest in learning and development. So I ended up getting a coach at the back end of last year, so I've been working with a coach for probably like 8 or 9 months now. Found that really beneficial. Some of the other people in my team have also discovered and gone after coaching as well, and I'm finding that really, really beneficial. I've certainly learned a hell of a lot from it, and I've developed a hell of a lot from having coaching, which has been wonderful. Mentoring, and so being a mentee and then also mentoring other people outside of SPG has been really cool for me. So I think for me, the biggest learning is just investing more in myself and ourselves, because I think the more I've invested in me, the more I've kind of pushed the team to invest in themselves as well, like discovering coaching and jumping on mentoring programs like the Beamer scheme. Like a few of them have jumped on the Beamer scheme for mentoring, which is really cool. But I think that, and then for me, big learning for last year was just kind of, as I mentioned a little bit, was just kind of flexing the leadership style, and knowing when to kind of flex it, and knowing when certain leadership styles work well, not overusing them in certain situations, and then when to kind of stop using them and move to a different one, and trying to be a bit more conscious around which style you're using at that particular time to give people the freedom, really, to empower the managers in my team to do what they need to do.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing I've learned as well since going to management is that it's a big responsibility. You know, you're responsible for people's careers. You're responsible for people, and you know, even if you've got a small team of 5, it's a lot of careers. So it's almost a lot of pressure in that regard to make sure that you're managing the right way to allow them to grow into things they want to do, but still making sure the day-to-day metrics and the work is kind of the quality you expect, right? So yeah, definitely agree with you on that one. Yeah. What's on the horizon then, both for you and for Sky Betting Gaming?
I think we need to. We mentioned some of the kind of identity pieces earlier on. I think that isn't going to go away. I think we're probably still going to see. We've obviously had iOS problems this year, and got the cookie conundrum still yet to solve, and I think we're going to probably see more. We've got the e-privacy kind of piece coming out as well. I mean, I don't know whether, I think that's the year after next, but that's going to be something that we have to really prepare for, which could be pretty seismic. I think for us as a team, it's going to be any kind of regulatory headwinds that are linked to the gambling industry, like the Gambling Act review, which is something that we just can't really ignore. And I think it's great because we're kind of facing into it. We're not kind of like just kind of going, right, again, like the cookie, how do we kind of just circumnavigate this and just get around it? It's just, there's a lot of good evolution coming to the industry that we're all embracing. And then just kind of setting the vision, like the evolutionary vision. How is our tech stack going to evolve? How's our creative going to automate? How are we using and harvesting more first party data? And yeah, how what do we want to kind of achieve in media over the next few years?
Great.
And not just looking at it from a perspective of how do we just position ads and berate people with ads at a frequency of 30. Like how do we create more like meaningful customer journeys, I suppose.
Great. Sounds really exciting. And I think you touched on first party audiences there. I think audiences are going to be huge coming up as well, especially with the likes of PPC. What I'm kind of realizing recently after sort of talking to a few different people that work really closely in the industry is that it's maybe less about the keyword these days and more about the audience that sits behind that keyword. And if we can really identify the intent behind the audience, it almost doesn't matter the intent of the keyword in some regards. So audience is going to be massive, particularly with the cookie stuff. So a lot going on. I guess for all our listeners out there, is any kind of podcast, books, or maybe conferences that you really like that are worth sharing?
Yeah, I kind of, well, obviously there's this one.
Oh, of course, Neil.
There's this one. But I think for me, I'm a big fan of anything that the Harvard Business Review puts out. Really, really big fan of the HBR podcast. There's another one called Coaching Real Leaders, which again, if you're into coaching, is an unbelievable podcast. It's by a woman called Muriel Wilkins, who is a coach to the C-suite, and she has like one kind of business leader or C-suite leader or aspirational C-suite leader on every week, and she normally just does like one season of it, an episode a week. I think she's just finished the first one, and it's brilliant. So anybody who's kind of looking for like leadership guidance and stuff like that is amazing. MadTech, wonderful. The MadTech podcast is wonderful. Really, really big fan of that one as well. So those two.
And I think you've been on that one, right? I think I remember listening to the MadTech one.
I mean, I've got to shout them out if they put me on. Anything like that, it's just really, really easy to digest. And again, like the Harvard Business Review stuff is gold. It really is, because it's just so varied. You've got stuff around like leadership styles and management, and I don't know, how to get like a perfect work-life balance and stuff like that. So
great.
Yeah, it's cool.
Perfect. Well, we'll be sure to put some of those links in the show notes below. But other than that, this has been great. Thanks very much for your time, Neil. It sounds like there's plenty of exciting bits and bobs going on at Sky Betting Gaming, and I'm sure we'll continue to see all the awesome work that you guys are up to.
Thank you very much for having me, Chris.
No worries. Speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye. Thanks for joining me on today's episode of the Marketing Mini Bites podcast. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you're listening on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, please do like, reshare, retweet, whatever it is. And if you're listening on the podcast platforms like on Apple, please do leave a rating. It really does help out and get that kind of exposure and reach out there. So again, thanks for listening. Please join me next Wednesday at 9 a.m. for the next one. I'll speak to you soon. Thanks. Bye.